So, for those of you in my international audience who aren't sure who this lady is, this is Chrystia Freeland. She's basically the vice president of Canada. I think they call her a deputy minister.
Economic statement will be narrowly focused on a few key challenges. It will be focused on building more homes faster and making more homes available.
I mean, that's not really the purview of the federal government. What they should be doing is encouraging municipalities to adopt laxer zoning standards. In a market economy, it's builders that build homes
for Canadians to live in.
Now, they did institute another program. Let's take a look at that.
In a housing crisis, but it's not the first time Canada's been here. After the Second World War, when many thousands of soldiers were returning home to be reunited with their families at once, Canada faced enormous housing crunches. One of the tools that was deployed at the time to respond to the challenges they faced at that particular point in time was the development of simple pre-approved designs by Wartime Housing Limited. In fact, they adopted designs that many will remember as victory homes or strawberry box homes that can be observed right across the country. In many instances, these homes were being built in a period of about 36 hours. We intend to take these lessons from our history books and bring them into the 21st century. We are going to be moving forward with a catalog of pre-approved designs at the federal level. We are going to be launching consultations on the contents of that catalog in January of 2024. It provides an extraordinary opportunity to use the solutions of the past to identify and overcome, challenges that we face today. The next version of a catalog of pre-approved designs won't focus on the same kinds of homes that were included in the post-war era. We're going to be looking for a series of different kinds of homes and different designs within each category. We'll be looking for pre-approved designs for multiplexes, for mid-rise buildings, for student housing, for seniors' residences, and other small to medium-scale residential properties.
No love for the tiny home?
This will include garden suites and laneway homes and different kinds of houses that will solve the challenges that our communities are facing today. It's important that we have multiple designs in each of these categories so communities.
So basically the idea is there's going to be a catalog, pre-approved homes that you can build. They're going to be up to code, and so the builders won't have to worry about the whole design process. They can just adopt something from this catalog, build it, blah, blah, blah. I think this was the national housing strategy they unveiled not that long ago, the Liberal government. Let's see here. They're teaming up with some municipalities and plans to build homes, etc. So the problem with all these Liberal spending proposals is that we're already in a massive amount of debt. And sure, it's tempting. You see a problem, and there's no doubt there's a housing crisis in Canada. Rent is going up. Housing prices are insane. A lot of people in my generation and younger don't feel like they'll ever be able to afford a house. Even entry-level houses in the most desirable markets are like $1 million. Now, as you get outside of the major cities, you can find some more affordable houses. You go out to New Brunswick, which is sparsely populated, and there's some very cheap houses available. But if you're looking at a major urban area, which is where all the jobs are, very difficult to find affordable housing. So the problem with the government, devoting $80 billion towards programs to build houses, when in reality there wouldn't even be a problem if it weren't for the zoning regulations that prevent housing from being constructed in the first place. I think this is something the market could easily solve if the government wasn't in the way. For one, we've got a massive deficit. It could be anywhere $30 to $50 billion. The government keeps coming out with new spending programs every day, despite how, or perhaps because of how unpopular they are. and there was a $15 billion subsidy to Volkswagen, a foreign corporation. I mean, these guys are spending money like crazy, and right now, just the deficit alone, is massive, and the debt just keeps going up. And now, as interest rates have been going up, the payments on the debt are getting out of control. We're going to be spending more on interest charges for the debt than we do on our military, and that means taxes have to go up or services have to be cut. And this is the thing, when people say, oh, we owe it to ourselves, or oh, the national debt's not a problem. Well, yes, it is a problem. Absolutely, it's a problem, because they blew all this money on basically welfare, COVID welfare for corporations, welfare for individuals, because the government shut down the economy. Well, they didn't have to, COVID, yes, it was a problem, but there was no cause to shut down the economy. The fatalities almost entirely concentrated in the elderly, so you could have just quarantined them, kept them safe, And then what about the unforeseen costs? It's not just you shut down the economy. That led to increase in suicides, increase in depression, families were destroyed, people were out of work. And what about the ones that were working that had to pay the bill for all this, whereas you had unprecedented levels of welfare, basically $2,000 a month, And now we've got this unsustainable level of debt, gross debt. Canada hasn't had this much gross debt as a percentage of GDP. Forget about absolute terms. Obviously, with inflation, absolute terms, it's going up every year. But even as a percentage of GDP, gross debt back in '95, when there was a crisis, when Canada was looking like the next Greece, we had a lower amount of gross debt. Now, net debt, which is when you subtract government assets like the Canadian pension plan, and especially if you only look at federal net debt, but if you look at then it looks all right. But if you look at the provinces, because that's the thing, is that not all countries allow their provinces to go into huge debt as well. And that's what the article says. They don't account for Canada's remarkably high rate of sub-sovereign debt. As a matter of fact, Ontario is the world's largest sub-sovereign debtor. Okay? More than California, more debt than any other polity at the provincial or state level in the world. Okay? And the other provinces not doing much better. So we have a ton of debt, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some downgrades in the ratings of Canadian bonds by Moody's, these other companies. So if you look at France, you look at Korea, you look at Ireland, and these countries, all their debts at the federal level, their spending's at the federal level. So it's not an apples to apples comparison if you're just looking at net federal debt. Like the article says, France has enough central government debt to equal 92% of its GDP. Canada 49%. But when you add together with the provinces, now Canada's gross general debt is at 113%. France is at 117%. So now they're almost equal. Glaring difference between if you're just looking at the debt at the federal level.
On continuing our work to make life more affordable for Canadians, and on continuing to deliver our fiscally responsible economic plan. Our economic plan, since the depths of the pandemic,
I'm impressed you can say that with a straight face.
Has had the fastest rate of fiscal consolidation in the G7. This means we have brought down our deficits faster than any of our G7 peers.
Look, Canada's in a deficit of more than $40 billion. Okay? Last year, $90 billion. Total debt, federal and provincial, $3 trillion. So just because things aren't getting bad just as quickly as they used to be, doesn't mean the government is doing a good job here, okay? I mean, there's only one solution for Canada's fiscal problems right now, and that is massive reduction in spending across the board. We need to look at downsizing federal bureaucracies. You need to look at selling off government assets. Like, for example, shut down a building that they have in a major city, fire all those bureaucrats, shuffle down the bureaucracy, and then sell off that building, okay? We need serious fiscal responsibility, serious reform if we're going to get a handle on this debt situation. And the people who got us into this mess are never going to get us out of it. They're making it worse every year, even there's not a crisis anymore. A crisis that they caused, by the way. There's not even a crisis. So why are we going into $40 billion in debt in a good year to say what's going to happen in a bad year? We never should have given that corporate welfare to Volkswagen as a blatant attempt by Trudeau to spend a lot of money in his district, create some jobs there. His district, the Liberal stronghold. I mean, this is blatant manipulation on the part of the Trudeau government trying to buy votes with taxpayer dollars.
Weeks ago, data published by the IMF in its World Economic Outlook also reaffirmed that our government's economic plan has Canada on a responsible fiscal track, showing that Canada ranks as the country with the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7 by a significant margin.
See, this is how statistics can be manipulated, because UK, France, Germany, and Italy, Japan and Italy, not Germany and Italy, Japan and Italy, UK, France, these are all unitary states where all the programs and spending are done with the central government, the federal government. Whereas Canada, a lot of the spending is done the provinces, and they can rack up debt. So this is not an apples to apples comparison that she's doing. It's deceptive, it's manipulative, it's propaganda. If you look at net debt at all levels in Canada, which is just federal and provincial, municipalities can't really run up debt except for some capital expenses. By that metric, we're 20th out of 29 OECD nations in terms of debt to GDP. So let me say this frankly, this is a lie, she is a liar, she is lying.
Just projected economic growth in 2024 as well. As detailed,
She is misleading the Canadian public.
In the annual financial report released today by the Department of Finance, Canada's debt to GDP ratio was 42.2% in
That's federal net debt to GDP. So that assumes that they're going to take the CPP and the QPP as well as, and use that to pay off the debt, as well as liquidating all the crown corporations at their present day evaluation and using that against the debt. That's what net debt means. They take government assets, which granted some of it is like cash and whatnot, which it does make sense, okay, to write off against debt. Foreign exchange accounts, this stuff could be used to pay off the debt, but they need it for payroll or whatever. I don't know. But CPP, for one thing, that money's already spoken for, okay? That's going to be, just based on the demographic projections, that's going to be spent in like 20, 30 years as the baby boomers retire, as the net flow starts going negative. So what are they talking about? That's you can't use that against the federal debt. They're not going to raid the CPP trust fund, I would hope. I mean, I would hope the Trudeau government's not that desperate.
22-23. That is down from 45.4% in the previous year.
I mean, if you look at gross debt, this is gross debt, federal and provincial to GDP. We're at the highest level in history of Canada.
Pandemic peak of 47.5% in 2019-2020. Today, Canada maintains both the lowest deficit and net debt to GDP ratio of all G7 countries.
Again, same thing here. Canada's not a unitary state, so it would be more accurate to add up all the provincial deficits and add that to our federal deficit if you're going to compare with the G7, which has a number of unitary states.
Vers la responsabilité financière.
We are committed to